Hello, welcome to Feedback for the week of March 9th, 2011. I am joined by Steven Johnson.
Hi.
Nicole Zavalich.
Hey.
And Matt Kyle.
Hello.
Before we start talking about things that happen at GDC, it's worth pointing out that we will be at PAX East. That's in Boston, where I've been told it's 25 degrees.
Yeah, it's supposed to be in the 40s while we're there.
To me, that's 25 degrees.
Yeah, well.
It's like it's very, very cold, and it's for hardy folk.
Well, people over there are
Nonetheless,
like, oh, it's going to be warm when you're here. And I'm like, what's that?
Yeah.
Perspective, folks.
So given the fact that we're making this trek into environs that are, at the very least, environmentally inhospitable to us, make a point of seeing Feedback live at PAX, and that's 3:30 Saturday at the Manticore Theater. Obviously, it's at the convention center where PAX is being held. I can't think of the name off the top of my head. But the Democratic National Convention was there, so that should typify it.
That'll narrow it down.
Google it,
Yeah,
guys.
they had all
Yeah,
those
I don't
protesters
know.
penned in with chicken wire. It resonates as an image. Okay, we're done with that. Let's talk about GDC, because that just happened. And as opposed to previous GDCs where, I'm having to sort of melt blood from a stone, in terms of finding, kind of game content, a lot of game companies showed, some of their top stuff, EA and Sony in particular.
There was a ton of stuff there, yeah. A lot of cool stuff.
I think the big one, everyone went into it very excited, and I think that it lived up to expectations, was Battlefield 3.
That was amazing. Not my genre of
No.
game, like Super War games, but looking at that demo level that they played, was blown away by the detail, by the feeling of it being a real place, by every aspect. It just seemed like if the game comes out and it's like that, I'm totally on board.
Now,
Somebody's gunning for Call of Duty.
Yeah, I mean, somebody was definitely throwing down a gauntlet and
Yeah.
trying to get in. I think the one thing that I found notable is, to Steven's point, it looked like a very lived-in place. It's supposed to be a little bit in the future. It's the Iran-Iraq border. I actually have no idea what's really there. I assumed it was kind of rocks. And obviously hikers from UC Berkeley. That's not funny because they need to be let out of jail now. But this was very much a city, and I thought about a lot of the other war games we're playing. And while you tend to have a lot of graphic fidelity, you also tend to be in places that were once lived in and are now completely destroyed, or you're sort of out in sort of the hinterlands where it's just kind of rubble and things like that, rocks and a shrub over there in the distance. But this really felt like a city. In the very beginning of the demo, they're walking through a market and you have the meat hanging. And it did lend itself to an atmosphere that somebody was just here and everyone knew to kind of clear out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And-
you're in a real place with the idea that there are real people and that you're in the middle of something bigger than just a battlefield. You're in a country where
And-
there's actual civilians who are in danger. You need to save.
Yeah, I think so. I think the only thing is they showed single player. I've never spoken to Battlefield in high praise, excitement, anticipation when it comes to the single player. But yeah, as you said,
Oh, bad company.
yeah, I mean, which had strong single player, but that really
It's funny.
It was it was.
Had
But
strong
This one
characters.
doesn't look as funny.
No.
I don't think
Bad
so.
Company, too.
I mean, it had
Relax.
buildings crashing. I mean, it was a very dramatic. I think what's interesting, some people, and I think understandably, have said there's that sense of fatigue, as you were expressing. Do we really want to play once again kind of real world conflicts? Is how we run that down? I'm of the mind that given what the Battlefield legacy has been, and it's not so posited in the real world, that just the beginning of the game that would lead to something.
Well, I don't know. I think Battlefield is pretty grounded more or less here and there. But Battlefield doesn't play like Call of Duty.
Yeah.
And so the setting doesn't affect me so much as what am I going to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that if I'm playing Battlefield 3, that's going to be different than playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3 or whatever they're putting out this fall.
And there was that quick reel at the end where they showed some dogfighting stuff and tanks. I mean, obviously, vehicles is so essential to the understanding of the Battlefield universe, or at least the Battlefield philosophy. But yeah, I think that we're already looking at kind of. Okay, so does it outsell Black Ops? Does it outsell Call of Duty 4?
No.
It doesn't outsell, I don't think, but I think that as I'm not tired of the modern war genre, I guess, but I think I'm going to be playing this a lot longer than I play Call of Duty.
I think it establishes.
That's what I'm thinking too. Is that there is speculation that's surrounding the new Call of Duty game that we're going to get this year, and
Yeah, because clearly the new Call of Duty game is not going to be made by the Infinity Ward we knew.
Right.
Because so a lot of those people
or
are
the
not there
trailer
anymore.
of Black Ops.
Right.
It's like
So-
3 companies now that we're not too familiar with.
Yeah, well, Sledgehammer, I don't think they were doing that 3D, the third person
Yeah.
Action
Call of
adventure
Duty for a
Call of
while.
Duty game, right?
And then you've got Raven,
Who's doing
working on the
some of
multiplayer,
They did
which
Wolverine, right?
disturbing to think of in places. But it's I don't know. I'm still traumatized from Jedi Outcast multiplayer. But like I'm wondering if like you're gonna have a thing like everybody's gonna buy Call of Duty because it says Call of Duty on it, and what if they come back and it's like, well, this isn't as good as I thought it was gonna be, and then like Battlefield 3 is over there like, hi, like we have good
We are
things
good.
over here,
Battlefield 3.
and then what happens next year?
Yeah, exactly. Or Battlefield 4. Yeah, whatever becomes kind
I
of
assume
dominant.
they like Battlefield 2 had like 3 expansions,
Yeah.
like periodic
That's true.
expansions. So I figured that's what you do. You use it like a platform, like Rock Band.
Now, this was not the only EA game. They had a whole event where they showed. I've been to a lot of these events in my years. I don't think I've ever seen one where like the majority, except for one game called Fancy Pants, which just by the name alone at least had me interested.
Go on.
They were showing AAA titles, and it was a rather impressive. Like, hey, this is our lineup. The one that no one had seen anything of, but everyone had heard more than enough about from the loquacious Kurt Schilling was Reckoning Kingdoms of Amalur, which is now at least making. It sounds like we can just call it Reckoning because trying to say Amalur is especially have bread in your mouth.
Because I don't know. I don't think. I think you should. Fantasy games should probably avoid any words ending in ing.
Yeah,
Like there's a certain. Well, I don't remember. I can always forget. Fittingly, I always forget that one game you got sent a couple years ago.
Yes.
That was like the most generic fantasy game title of all time.
I remember this wasn't the one, but I remember I got one Tales of Mystery: The Secrets of the Pyramid.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right.
The pyramid is secret. All right.
I think the other one was like Secret of the Kingdom, like
Yeah.
like fantasy dungeon, or it was just like you just put a bunch of words together and called it a game. But like this one is, you got to keep your mind focused. Like the people making Reckoning are out to kill.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
They're making a lot of promises, though.
But now, did you get to see the game?
I didn't see the game.
Did you get a chance to see?
You know what? I saw the trailer, but I didn't actually see the game.
I
and
saw the game, and I've heard a lot of the promises. I have been in Kurt Schilling's company, who the man is possessed of a certain level of charisma that he could promise me a version of Field Runners that is unlike any that have ever come before it. So I went into it wondering, like, okay, this is the moment of truth, and wow. It's a very, very impressive looking game. The look of the game has a lot of color, something that I think that we complain about even in our fantasy games, that they have tended to stay on one palette. The enemy design definitely speaks Todd McFarlane. It was not like, oh, that's your equivalent of an ogre. That's your equivalent. It's like, oh, kind of neat. The animations, I think, are what really, really got me. Is if you're playing an RPG, remember this is their single player RPG, though I think that one can start to assume that there are elements here that you can assume you're going to see in their MMO. That in the movements of the characters, when you're building this character and you're making him awesome, you kind of want to see that awesomeness with all the time you're investing in his character building represented on the screen.
Right.
And that's what I saw that was so like, ooh, that's really neat. The mage acted like a badass and not some wussy in a robe hanging out in the back. He had these two fire rings, and like he kind of snapped them forward, and then his muscles just kind of snap back like this. And it was like, yeah, that's man mage.
Well, I saw it in the trailer. You see the guy like kind of do the blue magic Wolverine claws and like knock the guy back. I'm impressed that like because like I had thought that the guys involved in this, Kurt Schilling, Ari Salvatore, Todd McFarlane,
everyone from Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, right, Elder Scrolls guys. These are all people who I could see when they're making when they were making these promises like a year or 2 years ago. I was thinking if anyone is frankly dumb enough to actually try to actually do everything they're trying to do, as opposed to saying we're going to do this and then they do something like horribly falling short. I'm like, these guys are crazy enough to actually like not understand why you're not supposed to tackle things like that. And here they are like showing, and you're just like, oh, we've got tons of dungeons and they're all handcrafted and they're all, it's like it could be amazing.
I don't want to hit on this now, but just in the demo I saw and what they were doing, it was during the period of time that I was spending my 70 myriad hours reviewing Dragon Age 2, and this one demo, obviously I'm not comparing the two, but seeing that stuff helped me articulate in my head some of the issues I have been having with Dragon Age 2. And some of it was, you want to have good combat animations. And in this, the combat was, it was focused. I mean, I don't think the combat we saw there was how it would actually play in that section of the game they dropped some enemies in. But, you're playing a little bit like Fable and quickly being able to access various items, you know, how you were going to attack, and also getting to kind of focus a little bit more on one enemy. And ever so often it would slow down. And I was thinking of God of War, and I was like, am I supposed to do a special like parry or something? Like, no, Todd thought it just looked really cool at that moment, so it just slows down so you can appreciate it.
Do you get the feeling that like there's a little bit of like watching that game? I'm like, I feel a little bit like this is kind of what I thought Fable was going to be when they were first talking about Fable.
Yes, I mean the Fable thing, not just in the controls. I think in the color palette, that is the closest thing it was near to, and that as a fantasy world, it was both recognizable and not completely. And so, in that regard, it stayed rather unique, and it had that malevolence, but the colors seem to work in a wonderful contrast to that you kind of get out of Fable. I think that there's still a lot of elements that feel more part of a deeper, richer role-playing experience. I got to see each other the trees and how you build a character. That's another thing. You don't set yourself in a class at the beginning. You're just kind of there. At some point, you can sort of declare some level of specialization, but if you want a little magic, a little warrior, a little roguish stuff, you can do that, and the game has ways to help balance that out. That they don't want to. I kind of like their way of thinking. It's like, why are you making that life decision at the very beginning of the game? And they don't want to sort of terrify you with that. And it's all continuous land, which
that's
kind of
good.
Yeah, that's. Once again, when we get to Dragon Age 2, I'll bring that up. Now, here's a game I didn't see. Dead Island.
I saw Dead Island, and everybody freaked out over the trailer.
Yes.
Because the trailer was so amazing. And the game itself, while pretty cool, is not at all in the tone of the trailer, at least what they showed. I think they were trying to show something to contrast the trailer, which was a sort of it's the game itself, the level they showed was action, had a main character who was like a rapper. So he was making funny one-liners as he picked up melee weapons and smashed zombies over the head.
The player-controlled character was a rapper, not the father from the trailer.
Exactly. and the character seemed to be having a relatively good time with the zombie outbreak, like making funny comments.
So no
and
dramatic music.
No dramatic.
Children dying.
No children dying. And, it looks really
Bummer.
cool and it looks really fun. But, man, if you're going there for that emotionally resonant kind of feeling that the trailer gave you, it looks like at least this part of the game will not contain that. It's an open world game with a bunch of different characters, and I'm told that the other characters may be a little more serious, but the developers really wanted to make sure you knew that, hey, it's fun.
That's good. They need to remind us that it's fun.
Well, then you probably shouldn't put out a trailer that looks like a movie.
Well, yeah.
But I mean, when we saw that trailer, what do we expect? Did we expect it to be some like super dramatic, like I don't know. It's a zombie
I was thinking
game.
at least it might be kind of like Walking Dead.
No, I didn't expect it to be anything
But-
like that trailer.
okay.
That trailer was attention grabbing.
I know.
Yeah.
It worked really well, though.
What I'm thinking about, though, is the original Force Unleashed. That, suddenly when you see someone pulling down a Star Destroyer from the sky and everyone gets excited, you're like, well, crap, we might need that in our game.
We're going to put that in, but all right.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like
Hopefully you
in
don't
the
have to-
interview you had that they're realizing that their own success on the backs of the trailer may suddenly complicate some of their game design.
Well, hopefully you don't have to
That's-
escape
that's-
from your own zombie daughter by doing a horrible dual analog sequence.
Maybe
they-
just knife her.
But to be fair, like apart from the hype of the game, it looks like a pretty solid, pretty fun game. I mean, it's got some cool stuff. Like an open world zombie game is a great idea, and the focus on picking up objects and combining them together. There's crafting where you create, like, I think in the demo there was an electric machete that was a machete with a battery attached to it.
Is it like Dead
which
Rising?
is pretty cool.
Like a more RPG Dead Rising?
It is a more RPG. Dead Rising is a good way to look at it. They made a point to say that the crafting of weapons, it won't be ridiculous weapons. Like it's not
be
going to be.
useful weapons.
It'll
Teddy
be
bear machine guns?
Exactly. It won't be teddy bear machine guns. It'll be real things that
it'll
you would
be
actually
electric
find in an
machetes?
island. Well,
So-
That makes a lot more
How about this,
sense.
Stephen? Obviously, you only saw a small portion of the game, but I
Right.
think the other thing we're feeling, and that what helped with the trailer, is that zombie games are pretty prevalent right now, and that that trailer helped us stand out from the lot. Does the game itself, does it kind of distinguish itself?
It's sort of hard to say. I mean, the comparison to Dead Rising is pretty accurate. It does seem a bit Dead Rising-ish.
It is called Dead Island.
Yeah, I know. And there, the RPG elements are gonna make it stand out a little bit. But really, I think if it wasn't for that trailer, I wonder how I would feel about the game. Like the trailer was so great that
Would we
it's
have
kind
booked the appointment without the trailer?
I don't know. That's the thing is I don't know if we would. The other game that Deep Silver showed at GDC was called Risen 2, and it had I not had any prior knowledge of either of these games, I would have been just as impressed with that, which is sort of a pirate RPG, and it looks like if it's done right, it'll be pretty cool. So like I feel like the same about
I'm
Dead
trying to
Island.
think
If it's
about
done right,
upgrading
it'll
my
be cool.
pirate skills.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I'm putting
The Risen-
5 in ARG.
The Risen games are kind of the spiritual successors to the Gothic series. Even
Yeah.
though the Gothic series is still going, it's not really
In
Gothic
Europe.
anymore. Well, no, Gothic 4 is kind of considered a great departure from Gothic after Gothic 3, and so the Risen games are more along the lines of what Gothic
Gothic
was.
is the review we did back in San Francisco where I got blown by a goat, right?
What?
I'm sorry.
Blair did the review and me as the player. We did that thing with the camera.
Maybe
I missed this.
Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
All right. I
Another
hope
time,
it wasn't
guys.
a dream because I need
Gothic,
to go talk to my
Gothic
shrink.
was the series that has such like awkward controls I could never play it.
I think
That's-
yes. Now I'm almost certain that was the one. We'll go find that and maybe post it on the site so I don't look like I'm absolutely
I want to go
crazy.
find this one now. I don't remember that.
Darkness 2. I remember reviewing the Darkness during the longest drought we ever had in the summer that was finally ended by BioShock. I thought Darkness would help bring some
didn't.
light, and it didn't. How does
saw
this one
it.
look? How does it look?
It looks really great. It has a new developer. It's a Digital Experience, I believe.
Starbreeze did the first one. Those
Yeah.
were the makers
Yeah.
of the Riddick
The
games.
Riddick games.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the new developer, new art style. It's not going to be this photorealistic kind of direction. It's more of this noir. They wanted to make it feel like you're playing a graphic novel because
Okay.
the game's obvious comic roots. It looked really great. There's
Did he transform into the Darkness?
Well, he has the dragon demon arms.
Right.
So in a sense, I mean, it's from the first person angle, so you don't. I haven't,
Right.
in the demo anyway, I didn't see myself.
Did it look like you could actually control them? Because the last time, the collision detection, everything trying to be all snaky turned into.
Yeah, you control. It's quad wielding, so you have a gun in each hand, and then you can also control each of these demons. And
All right.
this one grabs, and this one cuts them in half. So there's all kinds of.
Were you knocking out lights left and right? That was there was a
Yeah,
very
there's a lot of
strange
light
Splinter
killing.
Cell quality to
Yes,
the first
there
Darkness
was
game.
definitely because you want the darkness. That's where your power is. But I mean, it seemed like it improved a lot in what the first one was trying to do, and it focuses more on controlling your abilities, and it's. I'm excited to see more of it. I'll say that.
Given the fact that a lot of those games are being published in very northern Europe, it'd be really cool if somewhere in the middle of the darkness you run into Alan Wake. And he's got his flashlight. You're like, oh, damn you, Alan! It turns out they're nemesis.
Like,
Sees.
Gordon Freeman's flashlight comes in, and there's just a
Yeah.
whole.
Well,
batteries
that one
and-
runs out of batteries immediately. Yeah.
But
That's what
this
it-
one's going to be out soon, so which is nice because a lot of
What's
these.
the date on Darkness 2?
It's a fall. We have fall, which is nice.
A
'cause-
busy
Yes.
Busy
fall.
fall.
I'm at the point where if you haven't chosen your date,
If
You
you
might
haven't
need to look
at
already
February
staked
I
out
thought
your
the
section of
penciled you in
October,
yet.
you might want to move to January.
I mean, it's a little nutty.
Yeah.
Okay. Alice Madness Returns. I saw this. Did you get to check it out?
Yes, I did, and I'm fired up for it.
I'm excited for this
It
one
was
too.
amazing.
Fired up.
I'm fired up.
In my interview with America McGee, I was, said like, hey, probably the biggest issue with the original Alice game is that it was console oriented with all the platforming, but it was on the PC. I'm kind of assuming this is the game you intended to make. He concurred and pointed out that Alice originally was going to be a console game. But at the time, they decided to just go with the PC version, which, by their own admission, was not the optimized version for the nature of the gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, it's just cool.
Yeah, it's just cool. Like, it's hard to even say what it is you like. I mean, it's got these cool platforming elements with those invisible platforms, and it's got the combat looks amazing. You have like 4 different weapons that are based on real world things, like a teapot. But I think what everybody's responding to, or I know what I'm responding to, is that main character of Alice is just so cool. Like the art design is so cool, and it's so nice to see a female character who's strong, and it's not like, but she's super sexy.
She's
It's
fully
just like,
clothed.
yeah, exactly.
The
It's
other
awesome,
thing I
man. It's
wonder-
really cool.
The plot of Alice Madness Returns, which I understand a lot better than Zack Snyder's Sucker Punch, but there seemed to be some level of similarity
It's
going on
true.
here.
Yeah,
and
they're very similar.
and I'm trying to figure out if it's going to help or hurt.
I don't know. I think Alice has a lot of cachet, and it oddly appeals to not oddly appeals to women
He's
greatly. I remember one of my non-gaming ex-girlfriends. I remember I walked in one day and she was playing that on her computer, like of her own volition. I had nothing to do with it. I was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "I'm playing this Alice game." I'm like, who are you? Like, but she finished the whole thing, which is more than I can say for myself, because I didn't get all the way through that game. That game was hard.
I hit the tilde key, put in G-O-D, and I had a fine time playing Alice, the first one. It definitely seems to resonate with women, and I put that there with Fable. This is one of the few games where someone can watch you play and be quite entertained, because the visuals are just so remarkable.
Amazing.
It really is.
And the source material. I mean, come on. It's Lewis Carroll's Alice in
the
Wonderland.
one thing about the source material is I still think they still have a stronger character of Alice in the game than they do. I mean, even Disney himself has bemoaned the fact that Alice herself, surrounded by all these wonderful characters, just really diminishes into sort of this kind of like, hi!
She's just so British.
Yeah.
You know?
It's like, oh my.
Not
oh
really
my,
surprised
oh
by
my.
the crazy things.
Now, that has a release date of either the 7th or the 14th of June.
I think
Yeah,
it's the 14th.
I
Yeah.
think so too. I don't
Why-
I
remember.
hope
why
it's the
I'm
14th, because too
14th.
much is on the 7th already.
know.
Well, here's the thing that's weird.
It is the
Alice is
14th.
coming from EA. And at the same event, they showed us Suda 51 and
Shadows of the Damned.
Shadows of the Damned. Excuse me, I'm blanking on the name of the gentleman who created Resident Evil. Mikami, Shinji
Mikami.
So they're working together. That comes out either the week before or the week
7th.
after.
It's June 7th.
June 7th.
Yeah.
So June 7th, we've got Infamous, that, and the Ocarina 3D remake.
Wow.
That's also the first day of E3.
Oh, yeah,
That's
the event
the
that we
most
cover.
important part. It just seems strange. I wouldn't be surprised if one of these moves a little bit out. I was trying to ask some questions around as to why EA would potentially be cannibalizing themselves. Not exactly the same market for both, but I also wondered if, hey, do you just put stuff out at the beginning of summer with an idea that it's going to have legs throughout the entirety of summer when no one releases games?
On the plus side, you know that E3 fatigue we always get, where we come home after E3 and we're
our
like, I don't
games
want to
suck.
play anything. Well, now we're going to have Infamous 2 and
Alice
Ocarina and Alice. That's
Yeah.
cool.
What did you think of Shadows of the Damned? I mean, it is kooky.
You know, it's not what you would expect from Suda, really. I mean, it seemed like more traditional than his.
Well,
It was
remember,
over the top.
Yeah.
when Mikami's involved, I feel that Mikami cooled off Suda in a good way, and Suda kind of got Mikami out of "don't be so damn literal, dude." and that, I mean, it was interesting. I mean, it's Japanese game demos can always be a little bit.
It's true.
Like it's hard to sort of parse it for what the game is supposed to be. Did you get a chance to see it, Nicole?
Yeah, I played it and I loved it.
I mean,
Like
it's silly.
It's silly. I mean, your main gun is called the boner, and you shoot bones, and there's the teether, and you shoot teeth.
Well, and also your gun is
Like,
really a demon who transforms into a gun.
Johnson used to be a demon.
He's called Johnson,
His
and
name is
the
Johnson.
boner.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
There's a theme there.
It's definitely a Suda 51.
Yeah.
I just love Suda. I was having drinks with Suda later that evening, and I'm just like, you're just this breath of fresh air.
Drinks, alcohol is the elixir of life in that game.
That's right.
So
That's how you get your
it's-
health back.
Yeah.
It is. It definitely has that punk rock. But yeah, no, you're right. It doesn't have that. It could playing a game like No More Heroes.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost this tense experience because like this is when it jumps the rails, right? Right. It's just always teetering right there in that Charlie Sheen brink. This it comes a little bit further away from the.
But
crowd.
it's
Although
just
when you
keeps
describe
winning.
it, you know, like when you really think about what's in that trailer, it's pretty far out. It's just for whatever
far
reason, maybe it's
out.
just the visuals are less
Well, but
striking somehow or something. I'm
I
not.
don't know. They're
you
not
know,
striking, but I mean, you're in hell and you're killing demons, and I mean, it's traditional in that sense. But it's over the top and it's gory, and there's all these sexual jokes, and it was funny dialogue. I
No,
liked it.
I think it's definitely going to also sort of stand out in terms of tone and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different
During
take
this year.
than Dante's Inferno.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
it's a very similar story actually. The girlfriend gets dragged to hell.
Except the girlfriend looks like she's just an unpleasant person. So.
There's some issues.
so
they need
why
to
not
work
just
out.
leave her there? You know, like
We have a few more games. I want to move on so we can talk about Dragon Age 2. Guild Wars 2. Did one of you guys?
I saw that. MMO.
Is this looking like a real contender
Yes.
now?
It
Yes,
is.
it is.
It's because they're taking what doesn't work in WoW and they're saying, hey, we're going to change that and give you what you do want. Real quick, you're not just a character in this world that there's all this chaos is going on, and there's this idea that it's a personal story that kind of like the MMO revolves around you. It's your story that everyone else is a part of, and so everyone gets to feel that. But then there's also this thing called dynamic events, and instead of reading text for a quest and just having to read the background of what's going to happen or what you need to do, it just happens. You don't read about like an attack, you get attacked, and those type of events is what carries the story. And so
Yeah.
They're
different.
taking this in the
No
opposite
text.
direction of Old Republic. Like, consider think of Guild Wars 2 and Old Republic as the complete flip sides of the same MMO coin. Like Old Republic is taking the WoW model and driving it so far into the story department that like
Yeah.
you're gonna get like buried under all that, and it's gonna be like you're gonna be immersed in this Star Wars story. Whereas Guild Wars 2 is like we're taking all that structural element off the game, and we're just gonna have you wander through this land, and you're gonna see things, and things are gonna occur, and you're gonna be like, I should do something about that, and like you can go in and,
And you don't
help
have
with
to
the
do
fight,
things.
and you
You're
don't
the
have to. You
wandering
walk
hero.
past it.
You're more like the man with no name, just kind of wandering into
A little bit.
fantasy town.
I mean, it's a much less structured, and Guild Wars 2 is really trying to not remind you you're playing a game.
Yeah,
You know?
that's a very interesting philosophy. And yeah, okay, well, good. We saw a few other games. I'm just gonna throw out one more. Double Fine's Trenched. It is an Xbox Live arcade game. They have described it as a tower defense game. It is so much more than that, and looks very, very impressive. And I think it actually improves upon the Brutal Legend combat style.
Yeah, they shouldn't call it tower defense.
No,
I think
I
that
don't
sells
think
it
they
short.
Tower defense shooter.
I think they
RPG
should call it
elements,
a Double Fine game.
customization,
Yeah,
and hats.
Yeah.
and there's a little bit. There's some Brutal Legend to that.
Yeah,
like
no,
I
there really
see,
is.
I see Brutal Legend
It's definitely
in there.
there. Once again, want to remind everyone about PAX East. We're going to be seeing games there: Portal 2, Fear 3, Rage, Deus Ex, Human Revolution, Star Wars: The Old Republic, Red Faction: Armageddon. Obviously, games that you are interested in. So make sure you check out the website. But if you are there, make sure you see Feedback Live, 3:30 p.m. in the Manticore Theater. We're going to have a special
On
guest
Saturday.
On Saturday, thank you. Ken Levine of Irrational Games, who is working on BioShock Infinite and has worked on, obviously, the original BioShock and more than enough games that you should admire, respect, and love. He will be joining us there. I guess I'll dress up. I'll put on. I will put on a pair
Can
of
we
shoes.
match?
Well, that might look a try.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
We'll think about
Little
it.
Reservoir
We'll
Dogs.
think.
Also, the X Play Live show taping. It's both sort of panel and show taping. 12:30 p.m. on Sunday. That's in the main theater. There should be a lot of surprises, probably ones I don't even know about yet. I guess we'll find out on stage. How I find out is always the fascinating part. As always, make sure that you follow along with everything that's happening at PAX on G4TV.com. That will be starting Friday of this week. Okay, so let's talk about the game of the week, because while I was at GDC last week, it was bookended by Dragon Age, which has sort of absorbed my life. Then GDC finished up, wrote the review. I'm about to head out to Boston. I'm told I'm married. I hope that I still am when I return from Boston. But yeah, I put in about 75 hours into this puppy. Really enjoyed it at the beginning. Thought some stuff was interesting, and then it just kind of never metamorphosized into the game I thought it was going to go. I know you guys have played a little bit more than you, but we've all had a little bit of time on it.
I put, I think, 3 or 4 hours in.
Yeah, I mean, it's a mixture. It's a BioWare game where its various components seem to stand very independent of one another, more so than, say, a Mass Effect 2, where they felt quite integrated.
I think it's interesting that you say that like one of the problems is the lack of like overall narrative drive.
Yeah.
Because right now I'm early in the game, so right now I'm thinking like, oh wow, this is cool. I'm doing kind of menial tasks and
Yeah.
sort of running around the city, and I'm like, I wonder what like the big thing that's going to happen that like is going to like be the overarching story is going to happen. And according to you, that doesn't happen. So I mean,
you see
I can see why
intimations.
that becomes an issue, because
Especially
if
70
I have to
hours.
do this for 70 hours, I'm like,
You know-
well, why? This is so
No, and I agree.
much like life.
I was so happy to not see, like in the original Dragon Age and every other fantasy game I can think of, the world is about to end, but it's up to you, highly unique individual that no one seems to have any respect for, to save us all.
Yeah, well, that's what I liked about it, though. I mean, that's what I dug about. Like, I played like the first 10 or 15 hours of it, and
Are you in Act 1 or Act 2?
I
Where
don't know
does
how you
Act
would.
You would know
begin?
if you're in
You'd
Act
know.
2.
Okay, then I'm in Act 1.
Okay, have you gone through the deep roads?
Not yet. No.
Okay, you're
I'm
in
right
Act
on the
1.
verge of that.
I'm in the deep roads.
Okay.
So
So
you're finishing up Act 1.
Okay.
what I
cool.
liked about it was exactly what you guys are talking about, was that like I really like the character that I've created, and the fact that the things that character is doing are very meaningful to that character and that
Yeah.
character's
No,
family.
Which is,
But that means as much to me, having played a million RPGs, as like, oh, you've got to save the world. Is like more like, oh, I got to save my family. Like I'm into that. I'm down with that
and
motivation.
I'm with you. Now, you're in the deep roads, and the way it sets it up is that deep road segment is pretty much like, this is where everything changes. In fact, there's the cutscene that is actually the flash forward to the man who's telling the story
Right.
about what's happening. That really sets it up that way. And you're like, oh, here we go.
Things are gonna get good.
And
haven't.
then well, it's funny because then you start Act 2, years have passed, and then becomes like a self-contained story. Some things about the politics in the city of Kirkwall that had been discussed in Act 1 now become more relevant, and the same thing happens for Act 3. But they don't seem to tie together. And yes, you're becoming a more important person in this city of Kirkwall. But at the very beginning of the game, there's a person from Dragon Age 1 that comes to visit you and says, "You're going to become important, and dangers are coming." And
Well, the framing device implies that too.
yeah,
It's true.
and it's there. But also, when you add in all the side quests, if it doesn't have that incredible, like, things are at stake, it further dilutes it, and it doesn't sort of say, like, hey, remember this, remember this, remember this? This is at stake. And there is a revelation that happens that does finally tie things back from the beginning of the game. You can see it from about 1 million miles away, and because of the way that they've led the story, there is no sense of denouement that comes with it. It's like, yeah, okay. And it really is... It's one of those, as I found with many aspects of this game, so many things to admire in the chances they're taking, but when you take a risk, you then take on a greater burden to see that risk through to a quality conclusion, and it was almost like the risk itself was enough to carry it.
Well, I can kind of see that there's a parallel there between what they did here and what they did in Mass Effect 2, where they're taking, Mass Effect 2 was also a pretty big risk in terms of story structure,
Yeah.
which I think paid off. In the end.
One thing that happened in Mass Effect 2 is, every time you were kind of dithering around, finding friends, helping friends out, it forced you into, hey, the collectors, something like that. That's all they kind of needed to do. But once again, they had nothing narratively to force you into.
Do you think that maybe it's like, because Mass Effect has such a strong, like, baseline they're working from, the idea of the epic sci-fi space opera kind of thing, whereas, like, do you feel like it's harder to make a compelling story on the level of that with, like, just the fantasy tropes?
Without falling into cliche, I think you're right. And I think it takes a lot more forethought at the beginning. Okay, how do we do this? There are elements of this game. I see it in the combat. I also see it in how a lot of the companion quests, because I will talk about what is undeniably an incredible thing in the game, and that is the conversation system. Just the way they mix both icons and colors to help give you indications that don't really tell you how the character is going to respond to it, but just gives you as much information as to how accommodating your response is going to be and what perhaps your motivation is, be it you're angry, you're trying to start a fight, you just want to kind of resolve this problem, or if you want money.
Did you guys find yourself, like, for probably the first time ever, like, really thinking about, well, how would this character respond to me being funny?
I will say it again. I mean, to prove
good.
how good it was, I slept with my first character.
First character?
No, in this game. The first time it happened in this game. And morning after, post-coitus. And they're like, so what does this mean between you and me? And I kind of stood up and I was like, I went out, had a cigarette. I'm like, went back. But I said, what are you doing? I'm like, nothing. But somehow I felt like, oh, God, I can't tell her. Oh, boy. And I really didn't know what to do. And I said that I think for many people out there, this may be more terrifying than anything in Resident Evil 4, any other horror game out there.
Because at least I know how to deal with that. I shoot
That is really demonstrative of how effective it is, and that the writing, while I didn't like the story structure, the writing in the moment is exceptional, and they have well-drawn characters, leaps and bounds over what I felt was primarily just sort of a pastiche of archetypes in the original Dragon Age.
Presentationally, it is so far beyond Dragon Age 1.
That's why I would still encourage many people to go out there and play it, because you're really seeing a massive evolution. And
although not everyone's going to agree with that on the combat.
No. Well, I was going to say,
I think it's a step forward.
Yeah, I
I
like
agree.
the combat.
I liked it too.
I don't know what to make of it.
What did you play as?
Honestly, it's like...
But you've played a lot more of it than we have.
Well, but
so
it's also...
You've seen the depths of the combat system and the end game and all that.
It wasn't balanced. I'll give you that.
Well, it's also... Okay, if you have real-time combat... Let's look at one of the sort of the top ones out there, God of War. There are things that then you have to take into greater consideration than you would in a role-playing game. Enemy placement, how many enemies, a better understanding of how someone's going to play through it. I think, and even though I'm tired of it too, in a traditional RPG, it's a little bit sloppier than that. You have the enemies, and you just strategically kind of work out with your party how that's going to happen. This is somewhere in the middle. And when it's really easy, it's like, okay, I can make this work. But when it becomes challenging, I felt that it's like it suddenly wants me to play Dragon Age Origins. And the camera perspective mixed with the speed of the battle and how quickly, if you're allowing your party members to automate, which I feel the game is at least initially encouraging you to do, you're not having as much control over what special powers or what spells they're using.
Well, I feel like the perspective they made, not as much on the PC version of the first one, but like they really seem to have dropped the camera behind Hawk on this one. And I don't feel I have the battlefield awareness required to micromanage my characters on that level. But you still run into those battles where where clearly just playing as Hawk is not enough.
Well, I mean, but or as I found out many times, because there was that point where I would love to engage in the level of strategy that I did in Dragon Age Origins on the PC, but I also feel that you're trying to also not have me do that. Yes, there's that tactics menu, and I will say it again. They use the same tactics menu from Dragon Age Origins, and it is about as much fun to go into that tactics menu as it is to go into your Windows system folder. I mean, it is too detailed. Yes, they have certain ways that you can just say, okay, defensive, offensive, but then it's the same thing I complain about when you're trying to figure out how to do all the sliders when you have a PC version of a game so it works with your graphics card. I mean, that's not. That's fun for a very small segment of people, and that was the problem I was having with the game. I could make it work for myself. But I thought about the audience they're trying to bring in with this type of combat, and then it's like they completely do an about face, and it doesn't happen like just at the end. It spikes in difficulty, and sometimes I'm like, I don't understand what I did wrong.
Well, I think the thing about Dragon Age, and a part of it is like the more and more it resembles Mass Effect, the more and more you're tempted to play it as Mass Effect. Yeah. And Mass Effect has a lot of situations where your party members are dead,
and you can handle it.
You get out of it, and everything you can handle it. Not true in Dragon Age, because Dragon Age comes from that Baldur's Gate tradition of party management and party RPG tactics. If one of your guys goes down in Dragon Age, you're probably going to die. I mean, unless you are that far away from winning.
My rogues usually would just die like that. And this is the other thing that I think is at the core of the problem. I thought about detailing this in the review, but then I realized that it wasn't fun to read. Mana and stamina, depending if you are a melee class or if you're a magic class, pretty much decides all those special powers that you get to use. Now, how much mana or stamina you have is completely contingent on how much you have in willpower. Now, if you're a rogue or if you're a warrior, that's like the third of three main things that you want to put points in. But if you're a warrior, you're kind of looking at strength, and you're looking at things that cause damage. And I didn't realize how important that willpower was going to be. I think many people make that same mistake, as with the rogue. Now, the mage, it's just magic and willpower. So pretty deep into the game, I was realizing that for the enemies at hand, I was pretty much would drain all of my stamina in the first handful of attacks, and then be smashing on that A button. Ever so often trying to get a little bit more stamina and get one more attack, smashing on the A button. For boss battles, I mean, my thumb was hurting. And that it's like there's a very easy way to change that to make it accessible to the more action gamer, who I think they're trying to bring in, is don't have it managed by mana and stamina. Have it managed by cooldowns. Have powerful spells that take longer to cool down. Have ones that are less powerful. And it would have been fun, and you're doing exciting things in the
and
combat.
They're halfway there, because there are cooldowns in addition to mana and stamina. So it's like, well, how limited do you want me to get on that one? And I felt playing as a mage, because you played as a warrior.
Yeah.
Playing as a mage, to me, they're not the gods they were in Dragon Age 1, but it's easier because you're generally back, watching the fight, putting your spells where they need to go, and the warriors will just fight. If you're a warrior and you're in the middle of all that crap, you don't know if the mage is getting flanked.
The challenge will start with the mage, I imagine, when you finally get multiple weaker enemies and some kind of strong, bigger enemies that are going to start going after the mage. Once again, that party management will rear its ugly head, and you're like, hold on, the game's not really facilitating.
Well, and that's where I'm going to have to go into the tactics menus and come up with some kind of guard the damn mage.
I think as an overall view of the combat, it seems like they were trying to please every different group of people, and then you can't do that, and everybody's disappointed when you try to do that.
And the thing is, they also didn't educate the player as to what they're expecting of them to understand and learn about the combat. That they teach you how to do it in the beginning, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, but you might want to start doing this now. It's like, what are you talking about?
Like I said, I'm 10, 15 hours in, and I'm still I'm just now going, okay, now I get it.
Yeah.
And that's a long time to be like, yeah, I'm not quite sure I'm doing this right. You know what I'm saying? So
I just think they're at cross.
Although I'm totally on board. I love the game as a whole.
I think they're at cross purposes with how they're making a lot. Because especially if you're going to move into this direction of Mass Effect, where I'm playing Hawk. I am choosing these dialogue things for this character, and I am the one he is who I am, or she is who I am,
and it's
in
voiced.
This story, and it's voiced. and then you want me to suddenly in combat be everyone.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think you're going to see, like, you know, there's going to be people that hate the move away from the tactical group combat, and there's going to be people that want it to go further into the more Mass Effect sort of I'm playing Hawk and everyone else needs to take care of themselves kind of thing. I am more of the latter. I would like it to be more I am Hawk and everyone else can do their own thing and I can talk to you, or, you know, because the streamlined system of Mass Effect 2 would work for me much better than this tactical idea
I think
on
so.
a console.
And I think it's just you're asking a lot of people who are part of this console generation. I would love to there always be two iterations, one that is very deep and rich for the PC. I think the PC is a perfect machine. I like hunching over and fiddling with everything.
Yeah, and in
That's
the end,
not as fun to do sitting back on the couch.
yeah, and in the end, I think the lesson for Dragon Age 2, if you're going to play it, whichever way you want to go, is don't be afraid to play with that difficulty selector.
Yeah, I would say drop it down to casual. I mean, you almost most, except for the most hardcore players out there, when you get to the second half of the third act, and it's not because it's too hard, it's not fun. Just, you know, it's like just having multiple enemies or that one really big one. It's like, okay, I'm 10 minutes in. It's just, it becomes a little bit tedious, and it's not the highlight of the game. The highlight of the game are those wonderful conversations. I want to get to the other two things that I think also sort of drag down the franchise, as you were starting to notice. The dungeons. There are 5 dungeons.
Yeah.
You will be in probably about 60 dungeons in the course of it, but there's only 5 types that it
It's
pulls
the same
from.
dungeon. It's not you don't get new textures. You don't get new plants. It's the same dungeon, and different enemies spawn in the same places. And I noticed that pretty quickly.
And and the thing is, that coupled with the fact that, I'm just going to say it, you start in this city of Kirkwall, that's it. That's where you go. There's a couple of environs that are very small that typically lead you to dungeons. You do not leave this one city for the 70 hours of the game. And that was a shocker to me. And I said, once again, that was an audacious and ambitious move on their part, but they didn't make the city interesting enough for me to give a shit about it for the entire 70 hours. I mean, I'm going to say what R.A. Salvatore said in some interviews when they were talking about Kingdoms of Amalur. He said the most important thing is to create a world that you want to save. And this city was so much of just a simulacrum of a fantasy city. It wasn't a rich, deep world. I mean, it's
also
fun the first time you
the
go through
first
it.
game had.
Right, but the first game at least moved you from location to location.
Yeah.
There was something new to see. And I said, a fantasy game is predicated on awe and mystery. And there really is very little of that. And that while it's fun in the beginning, not having those surprises and then learning that it's not fair to expect those surprises going on, turned it into a far more tedious affair than I ever imagined it would. I did not like giving this game the score I did. It pains me.
I think that with fantasy games, there's a fine line between creating a rich world that you care about and creating something that's so detailed it's boring and you don't care. Because I found with the first Dragon Age that people were like, "Oh, it gets really good after the first 5 hours," and I played it for about an hour, and I was like, "All right."
People told me the first 30.
Yeah,
and it didn't.
I love Dragon Age Origins. Like, it was great, but I don't know. I like this one too.
No, I mean, but you guys, let me just want to clarify just for the people out there. You guys are like 10 to 15 hours in.
Yeah, I'm about 15 hours
And
in.
I have to say, I felt like you guys when I was 10 to 15 hours in.
there you go.
Well, then
It-
what
I mean, that's the
point-
thing.
It sounds overall like a lot of Hollywood movies that basically fall apart about halfway through the second
Well,
act.
but it's
you
not.
know?
It's not like it does something wrong.
Uh-huh.
It's that it does nothing more.
Right.
That's. I mean, which is really from BioWare. That is a shocker for me. I mean, it is something that surprised me. I encourage everyone to read. I think it's like 3,000 word.
It's a long
thing
review,
that
guys.
Killed me to put it out there. So please do one for old Adam here and give it a read. Our question of the week comes from Game Wizard, and it's about Dragon Age Origins Ultimate Edition. He's on his 8th or 9th attempt, and for the most part, even though my character is sometimes a different race or gender, I find myself doing just about the same thing for each playthrough, trying so hard to either recreate that feeling of the first time playing a new game or trying to achieve that perfect playthrough or my version of it. I tend to have my character, and by extension myself, become that nice guy hero. He was wondering if we are reluctant to go against sort of our initial predilections in playing a role-playing game when you do successive playthroughs.
Yes. But basically, I have a really hard time picking what would be considered the evil option or even the jerk option, just because it just seems like.
Who doesn't want to be the hero?
Yeah, exactly. Everybody wants to be the hero. Well, yeah.
Well,
that's-
here's the thing. Let me just to show how opposite that is for me. I always play the Paragon good guy in like a BioWare game. I always play the Paragon good guy first. I always do that, and then I do my second playthrough is evil or jerk
Renegade?
because I love being the evil guy so much that I know I'll play it a second time just to see it that way. The one BioWare game I can't do that on is the Knights of the Old Republic because I can't. There's something about
You
the
just can't do
Jedi
it.
thing that I'm like, I have to be a Jedi. I can't. I have no desire to be a Sith. I just can't. And like, I can't mind trick the widow and take her Toronto plate or whatever it is.
The
and
first time I
can't
did
do
an
that.
evil thing in Knights of the Old Republic, the first one, I had a panic and I pulled my internet connection out from the back of it because I thought maybe I was going to get reported for doing something evil. I will say, in Dragon Age, it doesn't have a clear good-evil split. One of the first times I wanted everyone to like me.
Yeah, well, they also
I
just,
realized
like,
it was teaching me things about myself and that I'm just an obsequious piece of
Right, yeah.
But,
they don't even call it like good. It's diplomatic and aggressive. I think are the names for the
friends and
choices.
rival. Yeah, or like,
Yeah.
I was kind
Yeah,
of
But like in the
rivalry.
strategy guide, they
Right.
call the choices diplomatic, humorous, and aggressive.
Yeah.
Like you're not being
But
evil.
but who doesn't want to be diplomatic? I mean that's
Well, see,
that's
the
what
thing-
I totally see what he's saying.
But
Like
the
I
thing
have
in
a
the
hard
world,
time.
some friends
People
won't
can throw
like you.
fire out of their hands. It's probably better to be
That's the one.
diplomatic.
Yeah, exactly.
But like some of the characters will prefer you if you're being sarcastic. If you take things too seriously,
Yeah.
either way, they're like, whatever.
But that's
you're-"
more of a strategic choice, not how you want to play.
Yeah, like, I feel like that dwarf, the dwarf who's telling the story, probably like in the framing device, he probably would appreciate my humor.
Yeah.
More than-
He looked so much like, and I blanked on his name, and I checked it. Ray Winstone, the lead from Sexy Beast, the British actor. He looked so. I mean, I think that he
does,
might
doesn't
need
he?
to get a little coin for what seems to be dwarven as it is, a rather remarkable representation of his face.
Is there ever an explanation? Maybe not. Maybe it's spoilers. But like, is there a reason why he doesn't have a beard? He's kind of very close shaven.
In my
which seems
75-hour playthrough, they never talked
They never addressed
about,
that because
Yeah.
it seems non-dwarfy.
Well, you know what? Actually, his non-dwarfiness is something that is addressed in terms of sort of his relationship to the Dwarven Kingdom that he was once an important person in. Yeah. So while they never talked about the beard specifically, which is funny because BioWare and beards, there's some stuff there. I mean, see, the problem is a lot of these RPGs I tend to play through as a review, and it is, as the exception being Dragon Age 2, not as comprehensive because I don't know everything that's available to me in the game. And so then I want to recreate that playthrough again, knowing everything that's there. And then, God forbid, if time allows, I will finally do the opposite run through. But, they can be time consuming.
Speaking of Dragon Age 2, I don't know how you could be anything but incredibly nice and protective of that elf girl who's totally out of her element. I'm
I
suffering
Meryl
so
or something?
yeah, exactly.
Meryl.
Like I can't like come
We-
here. You're so
I
sweet.
shacked up with her eventually.
Oh,
Right.
you.
She really likes me, so
Okay,
I'm considering it.
that was the girl that I slept with first, and because she was so nice, she's like, "What does this mean?" I was
See,
like,
and I bet you had to break her
And
heart,
trust-
didn't you?
No, but
Okay,
the
good.
thing was, I ended up with a relationship I didn't want to be in.
That's what happens in real life.
My God, it reminded me of 10th grade in high school. 4 months it went. God,
Was she an elf?
It was an elf.
Elfin, yes.
I
I think on that, we're going to wrap up this episode of Feedback. I'm going to get emails on Facebook for that. Oh, my God. Yes, we're going to be in PAX. Remember, everyone, check us out in PAX, 3:30 Saturday at PAX, the Manticore Theater. Also, make sure you check out X-Play Live. That will be 12:30 in the main theater.
Big theater.
Yeah.
Sunday.
I like the idea that Lincoln's going to greet people outside. Like, Main Street on.
Great moments with Adam
Disneyland.
Sessler.
All right, that's
And
it.
Lincoln.
We're going to go pack. You go read my review. I use big words.
And go to PAX. Fun.